The sun beats down on the courthouse steps, where a crowd has gathered to honor the late Captain David Harris, a decorated black soldier who gave his life overseas. His widow, Maya Harris, clutches a folded flag to her chest as she prepares to step up to the microphone. Reporters lean forward, veterans stand at attention, and a quiet hush falls over the audience. But before Maya can speak, a uniformed police officer shoves his way onto the platform. Officer Dalton, a tall man with a permanent scowl, raises his hand and points directly at her. "That's enough! You don't belong up here," he says loudly, his voice dripping with contempt. "This stage is for real heroes' families, not for people like you." Gasps ripple through the crowd. Maya stiffens, her heart pounding. Her husband fought and died for this country, and now, on the very day she was invited to honor him, she's being humiliated in front of everyone. She tries to hold her ground, her voice shaking but resolute. "My husband gave everything for this nation. I was asked to speak." Dalton cuts her off, stepping closer. "Not anymore. You've had your 5 minutes. Sit down before I make you." The audience murmurs angrily, but the officer's hand rests threateningly on his holster. The tension crackles like static in the air. From the front row, a group of elderly veterans exchange sharp glances. One of them, Sergeant Miller, slowly rises from his chair. His weathered face is etched with years of service, and his voice is steady when he speaks. "She is one of us, and you will show her respect." Dalton sneers. "Sit down, old man. This is police business." But Miller doesn't sit. He raises his cane and taps it firmly on the stage. "The Army doesn't leave its own behind." The words carry weight and whispers stir through the crowd. Maya's eyes widen, her grip tightening on the flag. Dalton steps closer to her, his voice low but venomous. "If you open your mouth, I'll have you arrested for disturbing the peace." The threat is the final straw. Before Maya can even respond, a commotion erupts at the edge of the square. Dozens of men and women in uniform, active duty soldiers, begin marching toward the stage. Their boots thud against the pavement in unison, their presence undeniable. The crowd parts as they advance, the sea of green and camouflage filling the space with an overwhelming sense of power. Phones shoot into the air, capturing every moment. Reporters shout over one another, realizing history is unfolding before their eyes. Dalton freezes, his hand hovering near his holster but trembling now. The soldiers fan out, forming a protective line around Maya. At the center is Colonel Ramirez, his chest decorated with ribbons. He steps right up to Dalton, staring him down with piercing eyes. "You've done enough," Ramirez says, his voice like steel. "Step away from her, now!" Dalton swallows hard, but he tries to bluster. "This is my jurisdiction?" "Wrong," Ramirez snaps. "This is her husband's memorial. This is her right. And we don't let cowards silence widows of our fallen." The soldiers behind him nod, their faces grim, their stance unflinching. The crowd erupts in applause, their cheers drowning out Dalton's weak protests. Maya's knees nearly buckle from the weight of the moment, but she straightens, drawing strength from the wall of uniforms around her. With her voice steady now, she steps back to the microphone. "My husband believed in this country. He believed in unity, in sacrifice, in honor. He gave his life so others could live free. Today I honor his memory, not with silence, but with truth." The crowd roars, veterans salute, and the soldiers stand like an unbreakable shield at her back. Dalton, red-faced and shaking, slowly retreats down the steps, his authority shattered in front of everyone. For the first time since her husband's death, Maya feels something stronger than grief: justice. And though the fight is not yet over, in this moment, she knows one thing with absolute certainty: she is not alone. The Army stands with her. The square outside the courthouse vibrates with energy, the kind that shifts history. Maya Harris stands tall, the folded flag pressed against her heart, a wall of soldiers behind her. The crowd's cheers still echo, but underneath is an undeniable current of anger at the injustice they'd just witnessed. Colonel Ramirez doesn't step away from her side. His presence alone radiates authority, but it's the unity of the soldiers, the quiet discipline in their posture, that shakes the ground more than Dalton's threats ever could. Dalton, still lingering at the bottom of the courthouse steps, tries to bark back control. His voice cracks, but he forces it louder. "Disperse! Everyone here is in violation of—" No one moves. Cameras stay fixed, red recording lights blinking like tiny beacons. The world is watching. Dalton's words dissolve into the air, powerless. Maya leans slightly toward the microphone again. Her voice is soft but unwavering. What you just saw was not only disrespect, it was an attempt to erase my husband's sacrifice. But Captain David Harris cannot be erased. The crowd grows silent, hanging on her every word. Maya takes a deep breath, glancing at the uniforms behind her. The strength she feels radiates through her chest like fire. David fought in deserts halfway across the world. He never asked if the men beside him were white, black, or anything else. He only asked if they would stand when it mattered. And today, all of you remind me that his spirit lives on. The applause that follows is thunderous. Even some officers stationed further away lower their heads, ashamed by Dalton's outburst. Dalton, red-faced, fumbles with his radio. "Dispatch, I need backup at the courthouse." But Colonel Ramirez steps forward, his shadow cutting across Dalton's figure. "Backup won't save you," Ramirez says calmly, his voice carrying further than a shout. "The army is here, and so is the truth." The soldiers behind him shift in perfect unison, their boots striking the ground once. The sound is sharp, commanding. Dalton stiffens. His authority, once unquestioned in his uniform, now feels paper-thin. From the crowd, Sergeant Miller raises his cane again, his voice trembling but fierce. "You think you can silence her? You just woke up the entire army, son!" Laughter and cheers ripple through the audience. Dalton's composure cracks. He takes a step back, then another, until he is swallowed by the mass of onlookers. Phones track his retreat, capturing every faltering move. Maya steadies her breathing. She doesn't want this moment to be only about Dalton's cruelty. It has to be about David. She looks up at the courthouse, the flag snapping in the wind above, and raises her chin. My husband's story is not unique. There are countless families who stand where I stand. Families who gave everything, yet still face prejudice when they come home. Today I speak not just for myself, but for all of them. Her words settle like stone in the air, unshakable. The crowd erupts again, some people in tears, others raising their fists. A group of veterans unfurls a banner reading, "Honor our fallen, respect their families." The soldiers surrounding Maya remain firm, but their eyes soften as they listen. For many, this isn't just a widow's speech. It's a reflection of their own lives, their own families waiting back home. Colonel Ramirez leans closer, his voice low but steady. "You've done enough. You've already won." But Maya shakes her head gently. Not until every little girl in this crowd knows her father's sacrifice won't be disrespected. Not until every widow knows she has a voice. Ramirez studies her for a moment, then nods slowly, respect gleaming in his eyes. As Maya steps back, the soldiers lift their hands and salute. The crowd follows, civilians mimicking the gesture, raising their hands high. It's messy, imperfect, but it's powerful. For a moment, the entire square feels like one living, breathing heart. Dalton watches from the shadows, his authority shattered, his name already spiraling through social media feeds. But the focus isn't on him anymore. It's on Maya, on David's memory, on the unity standing tall against division. And as the chant begins, soft at first, then thunderous, it drowns out every trace of hate. "Respect, respect, respect." Maya closes her eyes, the sound washing over her. For the first time since the folded flag was placed in her hands, she feels something she thought she lost forever. Peace. The army stands with her. The people stand with her. And justice, at long last, has stepped into the light. The chanting outside the courthouse grows louder, the crowd stamping their feet in unison. The rhythm vibrates through the stone steps, a living drumbeat echoing across the city square. Maya Harris stands at the center, her voice still lingering in the air, her courage undeniable. Reporters push forward, shoving microphones and cameras through the mass of people. News vans screech to a stop at the curb. What began as a memorial is now a national spectacle. Colonel Ramirez stays close, his hand lightly resting at the small of Maya's back, a silent reassurance. The soldiers around her hold formation, their eyes scanning the crowd. To them, this is no longer just a ceremony, it's a mission. Dalton lingers near the edge of the scene, his jaw tight, sweat running down his temple. Every phone pointed at him feels like a dagger. The man who moments ago barked orders now shrinks in the shadow of the army's defiance. A young reporter from Channel 7 pushes her way to the front. "Mrs. Harris, can you tell the nation what you want people to remember most about your husband?" Maya inhales sharply, gathering herself. She knows this is bigger than a soundbite, bigger than her own grief. She steadies her gaze on the camera, her voice low but fierce. "I want them to remember that freedom isn't free. And the families who carry that cost deserve dignity, not humiliation. Today wasn't about me. It was about every soldier who never made it home, and every family left to carry their memory. The words hit like a wave. Reporters glance at each other, realizing the headline has already been written. At the side of the square, Sergeant Miller raises his weathered voice again. I've been to 3 wars. I buried more friends than I can count, but I'll be damned if I let some cop dishonor their widows. The veterans in the crowd shout in agreement, fists pumping in the air. Their loyalty, once quiet, now bursts into the open. Some even begin to step toward the stage, closing ranks with the soldiers. The courthouse doors swing open. A city official, Mayor Daniels, emerges, his suit wrinkled from the chaos. He hurries down the steps, raising his hands to calm the storm. Ladies and gentlemen, please, he calls out, his voice cracking through the noise. I want to apologize publicly to Mrs. Harris and to every veteran present. What happened here was unacceptable. The crowd roars, half in anger, half in approval. Daniel swallows hard, continuing, Mrs. Harris, please know the city honors your husband. Officer Dalton's actions will be reviewed immediately. Maya watches him carefully. She knows politicians are good with words, but this moment demands more than promises. Colonel Ramirez steps forward, his voice cold and unwavering. With respect, Mr. Mayor, words aren't enough. The Army stands behind this widow. We expect accountability, not apologies. The soldiers stamp their boots once more, the sound echoing like thunder. The crowd cheers again. Dalton's face goes pale. The mayor looks cornered, the weight of public fury bearing down on him. Cameras zoom in, capturing every bead of sweat on his brow. Finally, with a resigned sigh, he nods. Officer Dalton, hand over your badge. Effective immediately, you are suspended pending investigation. The square explodes with applause and cheers. Phones capture the moment from every angle. The downfall of a man who tried to silence a widow. Dalton hesitates, his pride flaring one last time. But under the crushing gaze of hundreds, he slowly removes the badge from his chest. He drops it into the mayor's outstretched hand, his shoulders collapsing in defeat. Maya doesn't cheer, she doesn't gloat. Instead, she steps back to the microphone, her eyes shining with unshed tears. This isn't about revenge. This is about respect. My husband can't stand here today, but through me, through all of us, his voice lives on. We must do better. For our soldiers, for our families, for each other. The crowd quiets, hanging on her every syllable. Even the angriest faces soften, the weight of her words sinking deep. Ramirez salutes her. The soldiers follow. Then, like a wave, the entire square, veterans, civilians, even some city officials, raise their hands in salute. Maya looks out over the sea of people. For the first time since the folded flag entered her arms, she feels not just sorrow, but pride. David's sacrifice has not been forgotten. His name will not be erased. And standing here, shielded by the army and lifted by the people, Maya Harris knows the truth. Justice doesn't whisper, it roars. The square is still buzzing long after Dalton's badge clatters into the mayor's hand. The chants of respect blend with the hum of news drones circling overhead. The courthouse steps, once a place of humiliation, now feel like sacred ground. Maya Harris steps back, her hands trembling, but her spirit unbroken. The folded flag still rests against her chest, yet it feels lighter now, as if the burden of carrying David's sacrifice alone has been shared with the crowd around her. Reporters shout questions, cameras flash, but Maya isn't overwhelmed. She finally feels what her husband used to describe when he spoke about his brothers in arms. You are never alone in the fight. Colonel Ramirez signals the soldiers to hold position. Their presence is no longer just protection, it's a statement. This widow matters. Her husband mattered. Every family left behind matters. Mayor Daniels, rattled by the eruption, clears his throat and tries to take control again. Ladies and gentlemen, today we have witnessed both shame and courage. I assure you, the city will stand with the Harris family moving forward. His words, though rehearsed, are drowned by chants from the back. Honor our fallen! Honor our fallen! Daniels falters, his political tone clashing with the raw emotion in the air. For once, it's clear he's not the one in charge. The people are. Maya raises her hand gently, signaling for quiet. The square gradually stills, the silence more powerful than the noise. I never asked for this, she begins, her voice steady. I only wanted to share a few words about the man I loved. But maybe that's the point. Maybe the fact that my simple presence caused such a reaction shows us how far we still have to go. Her gaze sweeps across the sea of faces, black, white, young, old, military, civilian. They're all here, standing together because of one act of disrespect that tried and failed to erase her. My husband didn't fight so I could be silent. He didn't give his life so hatred could have the last word. He fought for unity, for freedom, for the idea that we are stronger together than we ever are divided. And I will not let anyone take that away. The silence breaks into thunderous applause, the kind that rattles windows and shakes hearts. Tears streak across strangers' faces. Veterans salute again, their movements crisp despite trembling hands. Dalton, now stripped of his badge, slinks toward a police cruiser. The cameras follow him, recording every bitter step. His name trends online within minutes, but not as the enforcer he once imagined himself to be. He is now the symbol of disgrace, the cautionary tale of arrogance collapsing under the weight of truth. But Maya doesn't watch him leave. She refuses to let his shadow steal another moment. Instead, she turns back to the microphone. To every widow, to every child, to every parent who has stood where I stand, know this: you are not invisible. You are not forgotten. And as long as we speak, they live on. The words ripple through the crowd like a current. Even those who came as bystanders now feel part of something larger. Colonel Ramirez steps forward, lowering his salute. "Mrs. Harris," he says, his tone softer than the steel he used on Dalton, "your husband would be proud, and so are we." Maya's eyes glisten, but she doesn't break. "It wasn't just me, it was all of you. He would have loved to see this." Ramirez nods, then turns to the mayor. This city owes her more than apologies. It owes her action. Real change. Policies that protect, training that prevents, accountability that lasts. The crowd roars in agreement, putting Daniels under a spotlight brighter than any camera. His nod is shaky, his promises half-formed, but he understands now that there is no escape. This moment will follow him long after the microphones are packed away. As the ceremony finally shifts, Maya is guided down the courthouse steps. The soldiers flank her, veterans fall in beside her, and civilians clear a path with reverence. Children wave small flags. Strangers reach out just to touch her hand. For them, she is no longer only David Harris's widow. She is the voice they all needed. At the edge of the square, Maya pauses. She looks back one last time at the courthouse steps where humiliation tried to silence her, but instead gave birth to something greater. Justice doesn't always come in courtrooms. Sometimes it rises on courthouse steps, carried by voices that refuse to be silenced. And as the chants swell again, "Respect, respect, respect," Maya Harris walks forward, the army and the people at her side, her husband's legacy burning brighter than ever. By nightfall, the courthouse square is nearly empty. The banners are rolled up, the chants have faded, and the cameras have been packed away. Yet the echoes of what happened remain heavy in the air, like smoke after a fire. Maya Harris sits quietly in her living room, the folded flag on the table before her. For hours she has replayed the scene in her mind. Dalton's attempt to silence her, the crowd's eruption, the army's unwavering stand. It feels surreal, like she stepped into history without meaning to. On the television, every major news network runs the footage. Anchors replay the moment Dalton is forced to hand over his badge. They cut to Maya's speech, her words stitched together into clips shared millions of times online. One headline blares across the screen: "Widow silenced by cop, amplified by a nation." Another: "The army stands with Maya Harris." Maya watches in silence. She didn't ask for this. She only wanted to honor her husband. Yet somehow, in one afternoon, she has become a symbol. Her phone buzzes endlessly. Messages pour in. Texts from neighbors, voicemails from family, emails from strangers across the country. Some are simple: "Thank you for speaking." Others come from widows who write about their own pain, their own folded flags, and how Maya gave them courage to stand tall. The weight of it is overwhelming. But for the first time, it doesn't crush her. It lifts her. At the army base, Colonel Ramirez sits in his office, watching the same footage. His jaw is tight, but there's pride in his eyes. "She did what no one else could," he mutters to himself. "She turned grief into fire." His aide knocks and enters. "Sir, the Pentagon's already issuing a statement. They're backing her publicly." Ramirez nods. "Good. Because this isn't about one woman, it's about all of them. Every soldier's family deserves respect. Meanwhile, Dalton hides in his apartment, blinds drawn, the glow of his phone lighting up his bitter expression. His name trends for all the wrong reasons. Badge of shame, #respect, widows, #Maya Harris. He scrolls furiously, watching clip after clip of his downfall. His phone rings. It's his superior officer. He lets it go to voicemail. The message that follows is curt. "Dalton, don't come back. Turn in your weapon tomorrow. You're finished." Dalton slams the phone down. For the first time, he realizes the truth. His uniform won't protect him anymore. Back at Maya's house, a knock comes at the door. She opens it to find Sergeant Miller, leaning on his cane, a smile tugging at his weathered face. "You did it," he says simply. Maya shakes her head. "We did it. I couldn't have stood there without all of you." He chuckles softly. "You reminded us what we were fighting for all along." They sit together in the quiet, the folded flag between them. For Miller, it's a reminder of the friends he buried. For Maya, it's the life she lost. For both, it's the reason they'll keep speaking. The next morning, the story spreads beyond the local square. National outlets replay Maya's speech on primetime. Social media swells with hashtags demanding reform and respect for veterans' families. Talk shows invite her to speak. Editorials call her the voice of the voiceless. At first, Maya resists. She's a private woman, not a politician. But the letters, the calls, the stories from other widows shift something in her heart. If David's sacrifice could light this fire, then maybe her voice could keep it burning. She agrees to one interview. Sitting in front of the camera, she wears no makeup, no jewelry, only David's dog tags around her neck. "What happened on those courthouse steps wasn't about me," she tells the interviewer. "It was about respect. And if we can't respect the families of those who gave everything, then what does that say about us as a nation?" The clip goes viral within hours. In cities across the country, vigils are held. Families bring their folded flags. Soldiers stand beside civilians. They chant the same word that shook the courthouse square: respect. Maya watches the broadcasts from her living room, tears streaming freely. For the first time since David's death, she doesn't feel powerless. She feels part of something unstoppable. Her husband used to say, "One voice can't change the world, but it can start the chorus that does." Now she understands. Maya Harris has become that voice, and the chorus is rising. By midweek, Maya Harris's face is on every television screen in America. Morning shows replay her words with scrolling captions. Late-night hosts reference her speech as proof of the nation's conscience. Even newspapers that rarely cover military families run her photo above the fold. At first, Maya feels exposed. She never wanted this kind of attention. Her only goal was to honor David's memory. But now, everywhere she turns, strangers recognize her. Some approach in grocery stores to shake her hand. Others simply whisper her name as she passes. What once felt like isolation has become visibility. One evening, her doorbell rings again. Colonel Ramirez stands there in full dress uniform, his expression solemn but proud. "Maya," he says, "you've become more than a widow. You've become a voice for all of us." She shakes her head. "I'm not a leader, Colonel. I'm just a woman who lost her husband." Ramirez's eyes soften. "And that's exactly why people believe you, because you speak with truth, not ambition." He hands her an envelope stamped with the Pentagon seal. Inside is an official letter signed by the Secretary of Defense. It invites Maya to Washington, D.C. to speak at a national memorial event. Her heart pounds. "Washington? I don't know if I can." "You already did," Ramirez replies firmly. "On those courthouse steps. This time the whole nation will be listening." Days later, Maya finds herself boarding a plane escorted by Army personnel. She clutches David's dog tags, her anchor in the whirlwind. The folded flag, carefully packed, travels with her. When she arrives in D.C., the scale of it all hits her. Rows of cameras line the streets. Veterans stand at attention as she passes. Reporters call out her name as if she were a senator or celebrity. But Maya doesn't walk alone. Ramirez and several of David's old comrades walk beside her. Their presence steadies her nerves. The event is held at the National Mall, beneath the towering shadow of the Lincoln Memorial. Thousands gather, soldiers, families, civilians, politicians. The steps are draped in flags. The air carries the weight of history. As Maya takes her place at the podium, she sees more cameras than she ever imagined. Her hands tremble, but her voice does not. "My husband, Sergeant David Harris, believed in this country," she begins. He believed in the promise that we are all equal, all worthy of dignity. He gave his life for that promise, but on the day I tried to speak his name, I was silenced, not by death, but by disrespect. The crowd shifts, silent, hanging on every word. But I learned something that day. I learned that silence can be broken when people stand together. I learned that one act of disrespect can spark 1,000 acts of solidarity. And I learned that my husband's sacrifice was not just mine to carry, it belongs to all of us. Tears glisten in the audience. Some veterans remove their hats, holding them to their chests. Families clutch their folded flags tighter. Maya's voice grows stronger. We must not only honor the fallen with ceremonies, we must honor them with how we treat the living, with compassion, with fairness, with respect. Because when we fail one widow, one child, one family, we fail them all. The applause is thunderous, rolling across the mall like a storm. Cameras flash. The image of Maya Harris, standing resolute with the flag in her hands and soldiers at her back, will be etched into history. After the speech, reporters crowd around, but Maya doesn't bask in the attention. Instead, she kneels by a young boy holding his own folded flag. His father's name is etched into a bracelet on his wrist. She takes his hand gently. "You're not alone," she whispers. "None of us are." The boy nods, his eyes wide, his grip tight on the flag. That night, back in her hotel room, Maya turns on the television. Every channel shows her speech. Analysts debate its impact, activists hail it as a turning point, and families across the country share it on social media. For the first time, Maya feels David's presence not just beside her, but carried by a nation. She doesn't know what comes next, whether she'll return to quiet life or continue as a public voice. But one thing is certain. Her husband's sacrifice has sparked something bigger than either of them. And as she lays her head on the pillow, the chants still echo in her mind. Respect. 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 The morning after Maya's speech at the Lincoln Memorial, headlines across the country echo her words. Respect the living, honor the fallen. Widow's speech moves a nation. The photographs capture her standing beneath the marble columns, the folded flag in her hands, the army at her side. In living rooms, from small towns to big cities, families watch the replay and feel something stir. Veterans who had long felt ignored suddenly feel seen. Widows and parents of fallen soldiers write online, "She spoke for us." Students share clips on social media, captioning them with the chant that shook the square, "Respect." The reaction is not confined to households. It ripples into the halls of power. Senators quote Maya's words on the Senate floor. Governors mention her speech at state memorials. Talk radio buzzes with callers debating what her story means. For once, the nation isn't split down familiar lines. The image of a widow silenced by arrogance, then lifted by unity, cuts through noise like a blade. But with attention comes pressure. Maya's phone rings constantly. Advocacy groups ask her to join their causes. Networks beg for exclusive interviews. Politicians hope to stand next to her to borrow her credibility. At first, she ignores them all. She is not an activist, not a politician, not someone seeking fame. She is still a woman grieving her husband. But when she receives a letter from a widow in Texas, written in shaky handwriting, she stops. "Mrs. Harris, I buried my son last year. When I tried to speak at his service, the officer in charge told me to keep it short, as if my grief was an inconvenience. I thought no one cared. But when I saw you stand tall, I realized I'm not alone. Thank you." Maya presses the letter to her chest, tears streaming. For the first time, she considers that her voice may be needed, not for herself, but for them. At the Pentagon, officials meet to discuss policy. Colonel Ramirez sits among them, his presence requested after his public stance beside Maya. "We can't ignore this any longer," one general admits. "The footage is everywhere. Families of the fallen are demanding accountability." Ramirez leans forward. "Then give it to them. Create a unit dedicated to supporting military families. Train officers not just to command soldiers, but to respect the ones they leave behind. No more dismissing widows as an afterthought." The room murmurs. Change in the military moves slowly, but Ramirez's words, backed by Maya's public momentum, carry unusual weight. Meanwhile, Dalton's downfall continues. His dismissal becomes official. News crews camp outside his house, capturing footage of him carrying boxes from his apartment. Online, his name becomes shorthand for arrogance. Parents scold their kids with warnings. "Don't be a Dalton." Yet Maya doesn't celebrate his disgrace. She barely thinks of him at all. Her focus remains on David and the families like hers. Back in her hometown, the courthouse square where it all began has transformed. Locals place flowers at the steps, not as a shrine to Maya, but as a reminder of what unfolded there. A mural begins to take shape on the brick wall of a nearby building, Maya holding the flag, surrounded by silhouettes of soldiers and families. When she passes the site one afternoon, she pauses. The artist, a young woman with paint-streaked jeans, looks down shyly. "You've given us hope," the artist says softly. Maya shakes her head. "No, we gave each other hope. I just spoke out loud." National media continues to chase her, but Maya chooses her appearances carefully. On one evening program, she sits calmly in front of the camera, dog tags glinting at her neck. "I don't want this to be about me," she tells the anchor. "I want this to be about every family who's ever stood with a folded flag in their hands, wondering if their sacrifice mattered. We can't change what happened to our loved ones, but we can change how we honor them." Her words strike a chord. Viewers flood the network with messages of support. Advocacy groups use her speech to push for reforms. Even skeptics admit her authenticity is undeniable. Late at night, Maya walks into David's old study, now preserved like a sanctuary. His uniform still hangs in the closet, his journals rest on the desk. She sits in his chair, running her fingers across the worn leather. "David," she whispers into the quiet, "I never wanted this. But if my voice keeps your promise alive, then I'll keep going. For you. For them." The house is silent, but in her heart, she feels his answer. Not in words, but in the strength that steadies her. She closes her eyes, and for the first time since the courthouse, she smiles. Not because the pain is gone, but because the purpose is clear. Her fight is no longer about one speech. It's about making sure no family ever feels silenced again. And as the nation listens, Maya Harris becomes more than a widow. She becomes a beacon. The week after Maya's speech in Washington, the ripple becomes a wave. Across the country, communities organize vigils for fallen soldiers. Families who once grieved in silence now stand together in public squares, holding their folded flags high. In Dallas, a mother reads Maya's words aloud to a crowd of hundreds. In Chicago, veterans march with banners that say, "Respect the families." In Los Angeles, students paint murals of Maya and other military widows, their art stretching across brick walls like a promise. Everywhere, the message is the same: no more silence. Maya never asked for this role, but it keeps finding her. Her mailbox overflows with letters. Some are heartbreaking. Widows describing being dismissed by officials, parents treated coldly at memorials. Others are hopeful, thanking her for giving them courage. One night, she sits at her dining room table, letters spread before her like puzzle pieces. Her son Jordan comes in and watches quietly. "Mom," he says softly, "you don't have to read all of them tonight." Maya looks up, her eyes tired but determined. "I do, Jordan, because if they had the strength to write to me, the least I can do is listen." He nods, understanding. For the first time, he sees his mother not just as the woman who raised him, but as someone carrying an entire nation's grief. In Washington, leaders begin to take notice. Senator Whitman, a decorated veteran himself, calls for hearings on the treatment of military families. He holds up a photo of Maya during a press conference. "This woman reminded us of something we should never have forgotten," he declares. Sacrifice doesn't end on the battlefield. It lives in every home that has lost a hero, and it's time our government honored that sacrifice properly. The clip spreads quickly, further fueling the movement. For once, politicians aren't just talking, they're listening. Meanwhile, Colonel Ramirez meets with Pentagon officials again. This time, there's no resistance. Plans are drafted to create a new branch dedicated to supporting military families, offering counseling, financial aid, and legal support. "This isn't just policy," Ramirez tells them firmly. "This is a promise." And for the first time in years, the room agrees without hesitation. But the growing movement also draws critics. Some accuse Maya of exploiting her husband's death for attention. Others dismiss the protests as emotional theatrics. Talk shows pit guests against one another, debating whether she is a hero or just a symbol inflated by the media. Maya sees the headlines but refuses to be shaken. She remembers David's words, "One voice can't change the world, but it can start the chorus that does." The chorus has begun, and she won't let the doubters silence it. One evening, Maya agrees to meet with a group of young activists who have been organizing rallies in her name. They gather in a church basement, their faces a mix of determination and exhaustion. A young woman named Aisha speaks first. "We've marched in 5 cities now, Mrs. Harris. People are ready to fight for this, but they look to you. They need your guidance." Maya hesitates. "I'm not a leader, I'm just—" Aisha interrupts gently. "You're the reason they believe change is possible." The room falls quiet. Maya looks around, seeing faces from different backgrounds, united by one purpose. She realizes that leadership isn't about titles or ambition. It's about carrying a torch others can follow. "All right," she says slowly. "If we're going to do this, we'll do it together. No one gets left behind." Cheers erupt around the table. For the first time, Maya embraces the role she's been given. The following weekend, the largest rally yet takes place on the steps of the Capitol. Tens of thousands gather, waving flags, holding photos of loved ones, chanting in unison. Maya steps to the microphone, her voice steady, her presence undeniable. "This is not just my story," she declares. "It is yours. It is every family that has ever handed over a child, a husband, a wife, a parent to this country, and wondered if anyone remembered their sacrifice. Today we answer that question together. Yes, they are remembered. Yes, they matter. Yes, we demand respect." The crowd roars, a sea of voices echoing into the sky. Cameras broadcast the moment nationwide. Hashtags trend. Commentators call it a turning point. Maya Harris, once silenced by a single cop, now speaks for a nation. That night, standing on her hotel balcony, Maya looks out over Washington. The monuments glow in the distance, silent witnesses to history. She clutches David's dog tags and whispers into the night. "We're changing things, love, and it started with you." The wind carries her words, as if delivering them to the stars. The morning after the massive Capitol rally, Washington buzzes with a kind of energy rarely felt. Newspaper headlines blare, widows' words shake the nation. Cable news runs split screens, one showing Maya's speech, the other showing the growing crowds across America. In congressional offices, aides scramble to draft statements. Lawmakers who once dismissed military family issues as symbolic now find their phones ringing off the hook. Constituents demand answers. What are you doing for our soldiers' families? For the first time in years, the grief of military households is not invisible. Inside a crowded Senate chamber, hearings open with testimonies from widows, parents, and veterans. Maya sits among them, clutching her folder of letters from across the country. When her name is called, she rises slowly and walks to the witness table. Cameras flash, senators lean forward. She places the folder gently in front of her. "My husband, Sergeant David Harris, gave his life in service," she begins. "But I am here today not just for him. I am here for every family that has ever held a folded flag and wondered if their country still saw them." She opens the folder, her hands steady. These are letters from families across America. Mothers who were dismissed at memorials. Fathers who were told their children's names would be forgotten. Widows who were silenced at ceremonies meant to honor them. Their voices deserve to be heard. One by one, she reads excerpts. Each word lands heavy, echoing in the hushed chamber. Senators who moments earlier looked distracted now bow their heads. When she finishes, Maya closes the folder. "Respect is not a courtesy," she says firmly. "It is a duty. And when we fail in that duty, we fail not only the living, but the memory of the dead." The silence that follows is profound. Later that day, Senator Whitman holds a press conference. He stands flanked by veterans, military families, and Maya herself. "We will introduce the Fallen Families Respect Act," he announces. "This legislation will guarantee resources, counseling, and protections for every military family. No more silencing widows, no more neglecting parents. Their sacrifice will be honored in law." Reporters pepper him with questions, but the story writes itself. The movement has jumped from the streets to the halls of power. Not everyone is pleased. Critics on certain networks accuse Maya of politicizing grief. Commentators sneer that she's being used as a prop. Social media hosts debates, some respectful, others cruel. Maya sees the criticism but refuses to be distracted. In quiet moments, she returns to David's study, holding his journals. His words give her strength. Real change is never comfortable, but it's always worth it. At home, Jordan struggles too. Classmates recognize him from television, whispering in the halls. Some praise his mom, others repeat their parents' awed skepticism. One evening, he slams his backpack on the table. "Why can't they just leave us alone? Why does everyone have to know who we are? Maya sits beside him, wrapping her arm around his shoulders. Because what we're doing matters, baby. I know it's hard. But every time someone sees us, they remember your dad. They remember all the families like ours. That's how change begins. Jordan exhales, still frustrated, but nods. Deep down, he understands. Meanwhile, Colonel Ramirez meets with Pentagon leaders again. This time, charts and proposals cover the table. The Respect Act will pass, he tells them, and when it does, we'll need to be ready. That means building systems to support families, not just on paper, but in practice. The generals exchange glances. Ramirez's voice carries a weight that can't be dismissed. They know the tide has shifted. The day the bill is introduced in Congress, Maya sits in the gallery, the folded flag resting on her lap. As senators rise to speak, her heart pounds. Some quote her exact words. Others reference David's sacrifice. For the first time, she feels his presence not just beside her, but within the very walls of power. When the chamber votes to advance the bill to committee, the applause that breaks out is rare, almost historic. Maya clutches the flag tighter, tears streaming down her face. She whispers softly so only she can hear. "We're doing it, David. Your sacrifice is shaping the future." That night, outside the Capitol, candles line the steps. Families gather in silence, holding photos of their loved ones. Maya walks among them, stopping to speak with each, her words simple but sincere. "You're not forgotten." The night air hums with quiet unity. The movement is no longer a protest. It is becoming a promise. The following weeks unfold like a tide that cannot be stopped. Maya's face, once known only to neighbors and friends, now appears on magazine covers, in editorials, and across social media feeds. Some call her the widow who spoke for a nation. Others call her simply the voice of respect. What matters most to Maya is not the attention, but the shift she feels everywhere she goes. Strangers stop her in airports, thanking her through tears. Veterans salute her when she passes. Families who had long felt invisible now stand tall, holding photos of their loved ones with renewed pride. At a press conference, Senator Whitman provides updates on the Fallen Families Respect Act. "We have bipartisan support," he announces. "This bill isn't about party, it's about honor. It's about ensuring no family ever feels silenced again." Maya watches from the sidelines, surrounded by families holding flags. For the first time, she feels the weight of hope pressing on her shoulders, not as a burden, but as responsibility. Reporters ask if she will run for office. Maya shakes her head firmly. "I am not a politician. I am a widow, a mother, and a voice for those who have been ignored. That's all I'll ever be." Her refusal only strengthens her authenticity. The public sees her as someone untouched by ambition, guided instead by truth. Back in her hometown, life changes too. The courthouse steps where Dalton silenced her have become a landmark. People leave flowers, letters, and folded flags at the base. The mural on the brick wall grows larger each week, volunteers adding names of fallen soldiers beneath it. One afternoon, Maya walks past the mural with Jordan. He stops, staring at his father's name freshly painted in bold letters. "Mom," he says quietly, "Dad's never going to be forgotten now, is he?" Maya's throat tightens. She pulls him close. "No, baby. Not now, not ever." Even as progress continues, challenges remain. Critics still fill certain airwaves, accusing her of dramatizing grief. Some lawmakers drag their feet, questioning costs of new programs. The old machinery of politics resists change, but Maya refuses to falter. Every letter she reads, every family she meets, steals her resolve. She tells herself again and again, "If I stop, then their voices stop too." Colonel Ramirez proves to be an unwavering ally. At a Pentagon briefing, he addresses senior leadership. "For too long, we've treated families as footnotes in our history," he says. "Maya Harris reminded us that they are the backbone. Without them, our soldiers couldn't serve. If we don't honor that, we dishonor every sacrifice." The room grows still. Even the most rigid generals cannot deny the truth anymore. Momentum builds when a national television network airs a documentary titled The Widow's Voice. It features footage from the courthouse, the Lincoln Memorial, and the Capitol steps, interwoven with interviews from families across the country. The documentary ends with Maya's voice. "Respect is not charity, it is justice." The broadcast draws millions of viewers. Hashtags trend for days. People march not only in Washington, but in towns across the Midwest, the South, and the coasts. A movement once sparked by a single widow now belongs to an entire nation. Meanwhile, Dalton, disgraced and unemployed, fades further into obscurity. His name becomes shorthand for arrogance and failure, a cautionary tale told in training programs across police departments. Maya does not celebrate his downfall. She rarely thinks of him. But the symbolism is not lost on the public. The man who tried to silence her became the reason she was heard. As winter approaches, the Respect Act nears a final vote. Families flood Washington, lining the Capitol lawn with candles, photos, and flags. Maya stands among them, no longer just a grieving widow, but a symbol of what persistence can achieve. That evening, she steps to a microphone once more. The air is cold, but her voice is steady. "We began with one voice," she tells the crowd. "We stand here tonight with thousands. Tomorrow, Congress will vote. No matter what happens, remember this: we are no longer silent. We will never be silent again." The crowd erupts in applause, chants of respect rising into the night sky. Later, in the quiet of her hotel room, Maya sits by the window, the city lights shimmering below. She holds David's dog tags, pressing them to her lips. "We're almost there, love," she whispers. Almost. And in that moment, though the room is empty, she feels the warmth of his presence, steady as ever, guiding her toward the finish line. The morning of the vote arrives with the weight of history pressing on Washington. The steps of the Capitol are already crowded before sunrise. Families clutch photographs of loved ones, veterans stand in uniform despite the biting cold, and candles from the night before still flicker weakly in the dawn light. Inside the gallery, Maya sits quietly with Jordan beside her. She clutches David's folded flag, the fabric worn but sacred. All around her, military families lean forward, their faces taut with hope and nerves. The entire chamber feels like it is holding its breath. The debate begins. Senators rise one by one, their voices echoing through the chamber. Some speak of fiscal concerns, worrying about the costs of expanding benefits. Others remind the room that no price is too high when it comes to honoring those who gave everything. Senator Whitman, the bill's chief sponsor, delivers a fiery address. He holds up a photo of Maya at the courthouse, standing tall even as Officer Dalton tried to silence her. "This is what courage looks like," he says. "This is what resilience sounds like. And if we, as a nation, cannot stand behind her and every widow, every parent, every child who bears the cost of freedom, then what do we stand for at all?" Applause erupts, even from across party lines. The roll call begins. Each senator's name echoes, followed by either aye or nay. The chamber remains tense, every vote a drumbeat in the hearts of those watching. Maya grips Jordan's hand tightly. She can feel her son trembling, though his face remains stoic. As the votes tally higher and higher, the outcome hangs in balance. Finally, the last name is called. The clerk announces the result. The Fallen Families Respect Act passes, 68 to 32. For a moment, silence. Then the gallery erupts. Families cry, embrace, cheer, and wave their flags high. Veterans stand and salute. Maya feels her knees weaken, tears blurring her vision. Jordan throws his arms around her, whispering, "We did it, Mom. We did it." On the Senate floor, lawmakers stand to applaud. Even those who voted against the bill seem moved by the outpouring of emotion. Senator Whitman turns toward the gallery, his hand over his heart. Maya presses the folded flag to her chest. In that instant, she feels David's presence as though he is standing beside her, smiling, whispering the words she once read in his journal. Respect is not optional. It is the foundation. Outside, the crowd explodes with celebration as the news spreads. Reporters broadcast live as chants of "Respect, respect" echo across the Capitol lawn. Strangers embrace, candles are relit, and flags wave in triumph. Maya emerges from the building into a sea of people. Microphones swarm her, cameras flash, but she ignores them all for a moment. Instead, she lifts the folded flag high above her head. The crowd roars louder, the symbol speaking louder than any words. Later that evening, a vigil is held at the Lincoln Memorial. Thousands gather under the glowing statue, candles casting warm light against cold stone. Families step forward to read names of the fallen aloud, each name followed by the solemn response, "Never forgotten." When it is Maya's turn, she takes the microphone. Her voice trembles, but her words are steady. "Sergeant David Harris," she says. The crowd answers. Never forgotten. She pauses, then continues. And for every name read tonight, for every family here, know this. The law of our nation now recognizes your sacrifice. This victory is yours. This legacy belongs to all of you. The response is a thunderous applause mingled with tears. As the night deepens, Maya stands at the edge of the reflecting pool with Jordan. The candles shimmer across the water, stretching toward the Washington Monument. Your father would be proud, she whispers to her son. Jordan leans against her shoulder. He already is, Mom. He always was. Maya closes her eyes, feeling the truth in his words. For the first time in years, the ache in her chest feels lighter. David's sacrifice has not been forgotten. It has been immortalized. Back in her hotel room, Maya sets the flag carefully on the table. She looks out at the city lights, her reflection in the window framed by the monuments of history. We did it, love, she whispers to the night. And this time, the whole world heard us. The morning after the Senate vote, headlines sweep the nation. Respect Act passes. Families of the fallen to receive historic protections. News anchors speak with reverence, calling it one of the most emotional legislative victories in recent memory. Across the country, military families wake to find their sacrifices acknowledged in bold print. For some, it feels like a long overdue recognition. For others, it is the first time their grief feels truly seen. Maya, however, doesn't bask in triumph. She spends the morning quietly, sipping coffee at her hotel window. Jordan sits across from her, scrolling through his phone. Mom, he says, holding the screen up, look at this. It's a photo of Maya from the Senate gallery, clutching David's folded flag as the votes were announced. The image has gone viral, shared millions of times with captions like "Courage Personified" and "The Widow Who Changed the Nation." Maya exhales slowly. That picture isn't about me, she says. It's about every family that stood behind us. Still, she knows that symbolism has power, and now she has become one. In schools, teachers hold discussions about service, sacrifice, and respect. Children write essays about Maya, comparing her bravery to civil rights icons. One school in Texas hangs her portrait in the Hall of Heroes beside Dr. King and Rosa Parks. The Pentagon releases a statement promising new programs for families of the fallen, citing the act as both inspiration and obligation. Colonel Ramirez's name appears in the announcement too, recognized as one of the internal champions. But with recognition comes scrutiny. Talk shows debate Maya's role, some praising her authenticity, others accusing her of being manipulated by politicians. One commentator sneers, "She's just a grieving widow used to push an agenda." Maya sees the clips, but instead of anger, she feels clarity. She remembers David's words in his journal, "Don't waste your energy on those who don't understand sacrifice." So she doesn't respond with bitterness. Instead, she keeps speaking at community events, keeps meeting families, keeps reading letters aloud. Her silence toward critics becomes its own form of strength. At a rally in Chicago, Maya stands before thousands, the flag once again in her arms. She tells the story not of her own loss, but of a young widow she met from Alabama, a father who lost his only son in Afghanistan, a mother still waiting for closure. These are the people the Respect Act was written for, she says. Not for me, not for one family, but for all of us. The crowd responds with chants of "Never Forgotten." The phrase spreads, painted on banners, printed on t-shirts, shared as hashtags. Meanwhile, Jordan struggles with his new reality. Fame at school is complicated. Some classmates treat him like a celebrity, others mock him behind his back. One afternoon, he bursts into the hotel room, throwing his bag down. "I didn't ask for any of this," he snaps. "I just want to be normal." Maya pulls him close, her heart aching. "I know, baby, but your dad wasn't normal. He was extraordinary, and what he left us, it's not easy, but it's worth it." Jordan doesn't reply, but later she finds him staring at the flag, his expression softer. She knows he's beginning to understand. As weeks pass, the Respect Act's effects ripple outward. Counseling centers open new branches near military bases. Families receive stipends that ease the crushing financial burdens of loss. Most importantly, ceremonies change. Widows and children are given microphones, encouraged to speak, no longer silenced. At one such ceremony in Georgia, Maya attends quietly, sitting in the back. A young widow takes the podium, her voice trembling at first, then strengthening as the crowd listens. Maya feels tears slip down her cheeks. This is what victory looks like, she thinks, not the bill, not the headlines, this. Even Officer Dalton's name resurfaces. In law enforcement seminars, trainers show footage of the courthouse incident as a lesson in what not to do. His downfall becomes a footnote in the story of Maya's rise. Ironically, the man who tried to silence her ensures that future officers will be taught never to repeat his mistake. One evening, Maya receives an invitation from the president to attend a White House ceremony honoring military families. She hesitates, uncomfortable with the grandeur, but Jordan insists. "Mom, Dad would want you there. Not for you, for everyone." She agrees. At the ceremony, Maya stands among rows of families in the East Room, chandeliers sparkling above. The president speaks directly to her during his address. Maya Harris reminded us what honor looks like. She turned pain into power and power into change. This nation owes her, and every family she represents, a debt we can never repay. Applause fills the room. Maya feels overwhelmed, but also steady. This is no longer just her journey. It belongs to all of them. That night back in her hotel, she writes in her journal. Her words are simple. "David, we're not finished. This is only the beginning. Your sacrifice will echo far beyond us, as long as I have a voice." She closes the book, the flag folded neatly beside her, and rests knowing that for the first time in years, the future feels like a promise instead of a question. The White House ceremony marks a turning point not only for Maya but for the entire country. Overnight, she becomes more than a widow with a flag. She becomes the living face of a movement. Her photo with the president hand over her heart spreads across every major newspaper and social media platform. Back home, neighbors decorate her porch with flags. Strangers leave notes of gratitude in her mailbox. Some days, flowers appear on her doorstep without a name attached. Maya accepts these gestures with humility, always reminding herself that it isn't about her. It's about what she represents. Jordan, however, struggles with the attention. At school, classmates whisper as he passes. Some approach him with admiration, asking endless questions about his father and about Washington. Others accuse him of chasing attention. One evening, he slams his bedroom door, his voice muffled but heavy with anger. Maya sits outside his door, listening. She doesn't intrude. Instead, she remembers David's advice. Let him come to you. Respect is also patience. Hours later, Jordan emerges quietly, his eyes red. Maya says nothing. She just hugs him, long and firm. Sometimes silence is the best answer. Meanwhile, invitations flood in. Conferences, interviews, speaking tours. Maya turns down most of them, choosing instead to visit small towns and community centers. She speaks directly to families who feel forgotten. At each stop, she carries David's flag with her, unfolding it gently and laying it across the podium. This flag isn't just cloth, she tells them. It's a story, and every crease, every fold, holds a name like yours. Her words resonate more deeply than polished speeches on television ever could. At a gathering in Oklahoma, a widow named Clara approaches Maya with trembling hands. "I lost my husband 15 years ago," Clara says. "No one listened. No one cared. Until you. Thank you for making us visible." Maya clasps Clara's hands, her own eyes wet. "You were always visible. They just didn't look hard enough. Now they have to." Moments like these remind Maya why she continues despite exhaustion. The Respect Act begins to take shape in real life. Counseling centers open their doors, staffed with specialists who understand military grief. Schools introduce scholarships in the names of fallen soldiers. At one dedication ceremony, Maya watches as a young boy receives the first award named after his father. The boy salutes the crowd and Maya feels her chest tighten with pride. Yet with progress comes new waves of opposition. Certain commentators rail against emotional politics, accusing Maya of exploiting her tragedy. An op-ed even suggests repealing parts of the act. Maya doesn't flinch. She has learned that the louder the criticism, the greater the impact of the truth. Colonel Ramirez calls her one evening. "You're doing more for morale than you realize," he says. "You've given soldiers a reason to believe their families won't be forgotten. That's priceless." Maya smiles softly. It doesn't feel priceless when Jordan is struggling. "Sometimes I wonder if I've taken too much from him." Ramirez's voice grows firm. "You haven't taken from him. You're building something for him to stand on. One day he'll see it." Indeed, Jordan begins to change. At a school assembly, the principal invites him to say a few words. At first, he shakes his head, terrified of speaking, But as he looks at the crowd, he remembers his mother's steady voice, her refusal to falter. "My dad was a soldier," he finally says. "He fought for this country, but my mom fights too. She fights so families like ours aren't forgotten. And that matters just as much." The auditorium falls silent, then erupts in applause. Maya, watching from the back, feels tears stream down her cheeks. Weeks later, Maya attends a military funeral in Arlington. She doesn't know the family personally, but she feels compelled to go. As the bugle plays taps, she stands with the widow, holding her trembling hand. "You don't know me," the woman whispers, "but seeing you here makes me feel less alone." Maya squeezes her hand. "You'll never be alone again. None of us will." That night, back at home, Maya sits at her kitchen table, the flag neatly folded beside her. She opens her journal and writes, "David, today I watched a boy salute in your name. I saw our son speak with courage I didn't know he had. And I held the hand of another widow who now knows she's not invisible. Your sacrifice didn't end with you. It continues through every life we touch, and I will keep going as long as I breathe." She closes the book, runs her hand over the fabric of the flag, and feels, perhaps for the first time, that her grief has transformed into purpose. The movement is no longer just hers. It belongs to a nation that finally remembers. The weeks following Maya's speech at Arlington feel like calm after a storm. Yet beneath the quiet, a new storm brews. Opposition groups, frustrated by the momentum she has built, begin staging demonstrations. Outside a community center where Maya is scheduled to speak, protesters gather with signs, "Stop playing the widow card," and "Respect the flag, not emotions." When Maya arrives, she sees the crowd through her car window. Jordan shifts uncomfortably beside her. "Do we have to go in?" he asks. Maya inhales slowly. "Yes, baby, especially now. If we walk away, they win." They step out, greeted by both cheers and jeers. Some protesters shout vile insults, others chant slogans. But inside, the hall is filled with families, widows, parents, siblings, waiting to hear her voice. Their eyes plead for her to keep going. Maya takes the podium, her hands steady. "Some people say we should stop speaking, that grief should be private, but silence is what made us invisible for so long. Silence buried our stories. I won't go back to that, and I don't think you will either." The audience erupts in applause. Outside, the protesters' chants grow louder, but Maya speaks over them, her voice like steel. Afterward, families swarm her, thanking her for not backing down. One teenage girl presses a note into her hand. "My dad died overseas. Until today, I thought nobody cared. You proved me wrong." Maya tucks the note into her purse, her resolve hardening. Later that week, a senator who opposed the Respect Act invites her to a televised debate. Advisors warn her against it, fearing a trap. But Maya accepts. On live television, the senator sneers, "You've turned your husband's death into a political weapon. Shouldn't healing be your priority?" Maya doesn't flinch. She holds the folded flag in her lap and looks directly into the camera. "My healing comes from fighting for others. My husband gave his life for this nation, and I will not allow families like mine to be ignored. This isn't a weapon. This is a promise, and promises deserve to be kept." The debate clip spreads instantly, shared with hashtags like #PromisesKept and #WidowsVoice. Even critics admit she held her ground with unshakable dignity. But the pressure takes its toll. One night, after a long day of interviews, Maya collapses onto her bed. Jordan sits beside her, frowning. "You don't always have to be strong," he whispers. Maya pulls him close, her voice trembling. "If I let go, who carries it?" Jordan doesn't answer, but he grips her hand tightly, as if to say, "I will." The following weekend, Maya is invited to speak at Fort Bragg, one of the largest military bases in the country. As she approaches the stage, thousands of soldiers and families fill the parade ground. She clutches the flag, feeling its weight heavier than ever. "This is not just my story," she begins. "It's yours. It's every folded flag handed to a mother, a wife, a child. And it's every promise this nation has made to honor those sacrifices. Promises must be kept, not just in words, but in action." The crowd roars, chanting, "Promises kept, promises kept." The sound rolls like thunder across the base, reaching every corner. Maya feels David's presence in the echo, as if he's marching with them. That night, Colonel Ramirez calls. His voice is warm but serious. "Maya, you've become more than a symbol. You're a leader now, and leaders face fire. Some will hate you for it, but remember, fire also forges steel. Maya closes her eyes, letting the words sink in. I'm tired, Colonel, but I won't stop. Not until every family feels what I felt at that vote in the Senate, that we finally matter. Back home, Maya places the new note from the teenage girl beside her journal. She writes, David, today I stood in front of thousands, and they chanted your name without even knowing it, because every promise I fight to keep is one you fought to defend. The fire is real, but so is the steel. I'll carry this until my last breath. She closes the book, folds the flag gently, and sets it beside her pillow. Sleep comes slowly, but when it does, she dreams of a march, not of protesters or politicians, but of families walking together, flags in hand, unbroken and unafraid. And in the dream, David walks beside her, smiling. Winter sets in, cold winds sweeping through Washington. The Respect Act is law, but implementation is slow. Families call Maya daily, telling her of bureaucratic delays, offices turning them away, and counselors who never return calls. Maya feels every complaint like a weight on her shoulders. One night, she sits at the kitchen table, papers spread everywhere, letters from widows, emails from grieving parents, reports of unfulfilled promises. Jordan walks in and sees her hunched over, exhaustion etched into her face. Mom, he says gently, you can't fix everything alone. Maya looks up, eyes tired. I know, but if I don't keep pushing, they'll forget again, and I won't let that happen. Soon after, a crisis erupts. A widow in Texas, denied the benefits promised under the new law, takes her story to the media. Her face floods national news, and pundits seize on it, claiming the Respect Act is broken and unsustainable. Maya's phone explodes with calls. Reporters want her reaction, families want her reassurance, politicians want her silence. For the first time since David's death, she feels truly cornered. That evening, she paces her living room while Jordan watches. If this law fails, everything we fought for crumbles. They'll use it as proof that we never mattered. Jordan places a steady hand on her arm. Then show them it hasn't failed. Show them what it really means. The next morning, Maya boards a plane to Texas. She meets the widow Maria in a small, crowded kitchen. The woman's eyes are hollow with grief and anger. They promised me counseling for my son, Maria says, voice breaking. But all I got were phone numbers that never answered. I can't do this alone. Maya squeezes her hand. You're not alone anymore. I'll stand with you. Together, they face cameras outside Maria's home. Maya lifts David's flag high and speaks firmly. The Respect Act is not broken. The system is. And if they think they can bury us in paperwork and silence, they've forgotten who we are. We are families of the fallen, and we don't back down. The clip spreads instantly, refocusing the narrative. Instead of blaming the act, people blame the bureaucracy. In Washington, hearings are called to investigate the delays. Maya is summoned once again to testify. The chamber is packed. Families line the seats, media cameras roll, and senators lean forward with sharpened questions. A hostile senator sneers, Mrs. Harris, don't you think you've stirred unrealistic expectations? These programs take time. Families should be patient. Maya's jaw tightens. She unfolds David's flag, laying it on the table in front of her. Tell me, Senator, when a folded flag is handed to a child, do you ask that child to be patient before they feel their father's absence? Do you tell a widow that healing must wait for bureaucracy to catch up? No, promises were made and promises must be kept, not tomorrow, not next year, but now. The gallery erupts in applause, the sound impossible to silence. Even some senators who oppose the act shift uncomfortably, unwilling to meet her eyes. After the hearing, Maya steps outside into a sea of cameras. Jordan stands at her side, holding her hand. A reporter shouts, Mrs. Harris, how do you keep going under this pressure? Maya glances at her son, then back at the crowd. Because I don't carry this alone. Every family here carries it with me, and together we are unstoppable. The crowd roars in support. That night, back at home, Maya sits quietly on the couch, David's flag in her lap. Jordan sits beside her, resting his head on her shoulder. You were amazing today, he whispers. Maya strokes his hair, her voice soft. I wasn't amazing. I was honest. And sometimes honesty is all we need. She looks out the window at the city lights, the monument standing tall against the dark sky. For the first time in weeks, she feels hope flicker again, not because the fight is over, but because it is far from it. and Maya Harris has no intention of walking away. The weeks after Maya's testimony feel electric. Clips of her words, "Promises must be kept not tomorrow but now," circulate endlessly online. Hashtags trend daily, and families from across the nation flood social media with their own stories, tagging her name, sending photos of folded flags, writing testimonies of sacrifice. Maya realizes this is no longer about one law or one hearing. It's a movement, and she is at the center of it. Calls begin pouring in from veterans organizations, student groups, churches, and even corporate leaders who want to host her as a speaker. Maya chooses carefully. She prefers small, intimate gatherings where stories feel personal, where people cry and hug rather than just applaud. But the demand grows overwhelming. Jordan watches the whirlwind with both pride and worry. One night he asks, "Mom, are you becoming too much of a symbol? Do people even see you anymore, or just what you stand for?" Maya pauses, folding the flag slowly in her lap. "Maybe both. But if what I stand for helps families like ours, then I'll carry it, even if it feels heavy." Soon, supporters organize something unprecedented. A nationwide day of remembrance and action. On a single Saturday, marches and candlelight vigils take place in more than 40 states. Families hold up photos of loved ones, their names chanted like hymns. Maya and Jordan join the largest gathering in Washington, where thousands march down Constitution Avenue toward the Capitol. The sea of flags is breathtaking. Stars and stripes, held not in political protest, but in solemn remembrance. When Maya takes the stage at the end of the march, her voice wavers from the sheer scale of it. "This is not just my voice anymore. It's ours. And as long as we walk together, no one can ignore us." The chant begins again. Promises kept, but not everyone cheers. Counter-protesters appear at some events, waving signs that say, "Stop using tragedy," and "Enough with the widow politics." In one city, a small clash erupts, making headlines. Critics seize on it, accusing Maya of dividing the country. For a moment, she feels fear creeping back in, the same fear she felt after Maria's story in Texas. That night, she sits with Jordan on the porch, staring at the flickering candle he lit in his father's honor. "What if I'm tearing people apart instead of bringing them together?" she whispers. Jordan shakes his head firmly. "No, Mom, they were already divided. You're showing the truth. And sometimes the truth hurts before it heals." Maya hugs him tightly, realizing how much wisdom her son has gained through their journey. A week later, she receives a call from the Secretary of Defense. He invites her to the Pentagon to meet senior officials about creating a permanent office dedicated to supporting families of the fallen. Walking through the vast, echoing halls of the Pentagon, Maya feels David's presence more strongly than ever. She remembers his boots on the floor, his voice calling home before deployment. In the meeting, generals and policymakers sit stiffly, papers spread before them. The secretary leans forward. "Mrs. Harris, your voice has carried farther than any official report. Tell us what these families truly need." Maya doesn't hesitate. Consistency, compassion, accountability. Stop making promises you don't intend to keep. Hire counselors who actually answer the phone. Process benefits without forcing widows to beg. And above all, treat every folded flag like it belongs to your own family. Silence follows. Then a general clears his throat. "You speak more clearly than any of us ever have. Consider this office created." When the announcement is made public, families rejoice. Newspapers call it the Harris effect. Some politicians roll their eyes, but few dare to challenge the overwhelming tide of public support. That evening, Maya and Jordan sit together in their living room, watching the news coverage. Jordan leans against her shoulder, whispering, "Dad would be proud." Maya nods, tears in her eyes. "He would. But I think he'd tell us we're not done yet." She writes in her journal before bed, "David, today I stood in the Pentagon where you once walked in uniform. They listened. For the first time, they truly listened. But I know the road is long, and I will walk it, one step at a time, until no family feels forgotten." She closes the book, places the flag gently beside her, and exhales deeply. The movement has a home now, but for Maya, it is only the beginning. Maya wakes to find her name splashed across headlines again. But this time, the tone is different. A major newspaper runs an editorial accusing her of politicizing grief and warns that the Respect Act has opened the door to entitlement culture. On television, pundits debate her character more than her message. questioning whether she's truly motivated by justice or by personal ambition. For the first time, Maya feels the sting of being portrayed not as a widow or a mother, but as a target. Jordan notices her silence over breakfast. "They're scared of you," he says, pushing his cereal around. Maya forces a smile. Maybe, or maybe they just don't understand. But inside, she knows Jordan is right. When movements grow powerful, opposition grows louder. The backlash intensifies. Anonymous messages flood her social media with threats. Flyers appear in some towns, smearing her name. A protest outside her next speaking engagement holds signs that read, "Widow for Profit" and "Stop the Harris Circus." Maya steps onto the stage anyway, the folded flag clutched tightly in her hands. She feels the hostility in the air but keeps her voice steady. "They can insult me all they want," she says, her eyes sweeping the crowd, "but they will not insult the memory of the men and women who gave their lives. I will not let their sacrifice be mocked by bureaucracy or buried by hate." Her words cut through the noise, and once again, the audience, mostly families of the fallen, rise to their feet in support. Still, the hostility begins to wear on her. One evening, as she reviews hate mail at the kitchen table, her hands tremble. She looks at Jordan, worried about the toll this is taking on him too. "Do you ever wish I would just stop?" she asks quietly. Jordan shakes his head firmly. "No, Mom. I wish Dad were here to see this. But since he's not, I'm glad you are. You're giving all of us a voice." His words steady her, like an anchor in a storm. A week later, Maya is invited to testify again, this time not before Congress, but before a national commission reviewing military family programs. The stakes are high. Opponents want to use the platform to discredit her and weaken the Respect Act. As she enters the grand hearing room, rows of families fill the benches, holding photos of loved ones. The commission chair begins with a sharp tone. "Mrs. Harris, critics argue that your activism is emotional, not practical. What qualifications do you bring to dictate policy?" Maya stands tall. She places the folded flag on the table. "My qualification is this," she says, voice steady. "I buried my husband and raised my son alone. I lived the failures of this system. I survived the silence. And I will not allow another family to walk through what I endured. If you call that emotional, then maybe emotion is exactly what has been missing from your policies." The gallery erupts with applause. Even some commissioners nod, visibly moved. After the hearing, reporters swarm her on the courthouse steps. "Mrs. Harris, do you worry about the growing opposition to your work?" one asks. Maya looks directly at the cameras. "Opposition means progress. Every step forward in history was met with resistance. But resistance does not scare me. What scares me is silence." Her words spread quickly, becoming another viral moment. Hashtags resurface, but this time alongside images of families holding signs. "We stand with Maya." Later that night, Maya writes in her journal, "David, the shadows are growing louder, but so are the voices of the families. They've turned me into a target, but I don't mind. As long as they aim at me, they won't aim at the widows who don't yet have the strength to speak. I will be their shield, and I will not break." She closes the journal, places the flag gently by her bed, and turns off the light. The storm is here, but Maya Harris is ready to face it. The backlash against Maya becomes a coordinated campaign. Overnight, several television networks run primetime specials with titles like "The Widow Who Divides America." Paid commentators accuse her of exaggerating military families' struggles for fame. Hashtags trend, twisting her words into mockery. Maya sits on the couch with Jordan, watching clips of strangers questioning her integrity. For the first time, she sees doubt flicker in his eyes. Not doubt about her, but fear of what this wave could do to them. "Mom," he says softly, "they're trying to destroy you." Maya pulls him close, her arms tightening. "They can attack me all they want, but they will never erase why I fight. They can't take your father's memory from us." The next morning, Maya wakes to something different. Dozens of messages from military families, soldiers, and even officers currently serving. They share videos of themselves in uniform, holding signs, "We stand with Maya." Some stand on bases, some in their kitchens, some at gravesides. One clip goes viral. A group of Marines in dress blues standing shoulder to shoulder declaring, "This widow speaks for us all." The narrative shifts. The opposition's attacks now look petty against the flood of genuine voices rising up. Still, the storm doesn't pass easily. Maya is invited to a televised debate against one of her harshest critics, a polished senator who has repeatedly dismissed her as a grieving widow turned activist. The studio is bright, cameras glaring. The senator opens with practiced calm. Mrs. Harris means well, but emotion does not build policy. Patriotism does not excuse entitlement. Maya listens silently, her hands resting on David's folded flag in her lap. When it's her turn, she leans forward. Entitlement? My husband gave his life in service to this country. Every widow, every child holding a folded flag paid a price no one should bear. Asking that their promises be honored is not entitlement, it's justice. And justice is the foundation of true patriotism. The audience bursts into applause. Even viewers at home feel the weight of her words, and clips from the debate dominate headlines the next day. Widow silences senator with truth. But Maya knows public opinion is fickle. She decides to focus not just on speeches, but on action. With support from veterans organizations, she organizes community service events across the nation. Families of the fallen volunteering at food banks, cleaning parks, mentoring children. When reporters arrive, Maya explains, "We are not here just to be seen as victims. We are builders, mentors, neighbors. Our loved ones gave their lives to protect this country. We continue that mission in their honor." The images of widows and children serving their communities spread quickly, undercutting every attempt to label her as selfish or divisive. As the movement gains momentum again, Maya receives an unexpected invitation. The President of the United States wants to meet with her at the White House. She enters the historic halls with Jordan by her side, both of them nervous. In the Oval Office, the President shakes her hand firmly. "Mrs. Harris, you've captured the attention of the nation. More importantly, you've reminded us of our duty. We want to work with you to ensure these families are never forgotten." Maya feels the weight of the moment, David's memory pressing close. "Thank you, Mr. President. I'm not here for recognition. I'm here so no other widow has to fight this hard just to be seen." The President nods, visibly moved. "And that's why you'll succeed." That evening, standing outside the White House, Maya faces a sea of reporters. Microphones crowd her face. "Mrs. Harris, do you feel vindicated against your critics?" one asks. Maya shakes her head. "This was never about me. It's about the families holding folded flags, about the promises written into law but too often left unfulfilled. If critics want to target me, fine, but they will never silence us." The crowd cheers, the image of her standing against the White House glowing across screens nationwide. That night, back home, Jordan sits quietly beside her on the couch. "Mom," he whispers, "you're not just fighting for Dad anymore. You're fighting for everyone." Maya places the folded flag on the table and takes his hand. "Yes, and as long as we breathe, this fight doesn't end." For the first time, she feels not just like a widow or a mother, but like the leader of something unstoppable. The storm may rage on, but Maya Harris has learned to walk straight through it. For weeks, Maya's movement surges with unstoppable momentum. Families across the country hold candlelight vigils, churches ring bells for the fallen, and schools invite her to speak about sacrifice and justice. Yet even as support blossoms, her opponents prepare one last, desperate strike. One morning, Maya wakes to breaking news. A leaked memo, allegedly from within the Defense Department, claims the RESPECT Act would drain resources and reward widows for tragedy. Major networks seize on the leak, plastering headlines like, "Is Maya's law too costly?" across the screen. Maya feels her chest tighten as she scrolls through the coverage. She knows the memo was designed to wound her movement at its peak. Jordan notices her silence. "They're trying to make people doubt again," he says quietly. Maya closes her eyes, steadying herself. "Then we'll remind them why we started." Doubt doesn't erase truth. That afternoon, she meets with leaders of veterans groups. Some are furious, pacing the room. "They're using money as an excuse," one says. "They always do, but no budget is too big when it comes to honoring promises." Maya raises her hand for calm. "We don't fight lies with anger. We fight them with clarity. Tomorrow, I'll speak. Not just for myself, but for every family who's been told they cost too much." The next day, cameras crowd the steps of the Lincoln Memorial where Maya chooses to respond. She stands beneath the towering figure of Lincoln, the folded flag in her hands. The setting feels sacred, purposeful. "They say justice is too expensive," she begins, her voice carrying across the crowd. "But tell me, what is the price of a soldier's life? What is the value of a promise made to a widow, to a child left behind? If honoring them is costly, then maybe it is time we question not the widows, but ourselves. The audience, thousands strong, erupts in chants. Promises kept! Promises kept! The sound echoes across the reflecting pool. Television anchors, forced to cover the speech, admit that her words strike deeper than the memo's numbers ever could. But Maya's opponents aren't finished. That evening, a senator holds a press conference, claiming Maya is being manipulated by activists and suggesting the Respect Act should be repealed before it even takes root. What he doesn't anticipate is what happens next. Across social media, videos flood in. Soldiers in uniform, veterans in wheelchairs, families holding photos of loved ones, declaring, "We stand with Maya. We stand with the Respect Act." Within hours, the Pentagon releases a rare statement. The sacrifices of military families cannot be measured in dollars. We support the Respect Act and the families it protects. The opposition strategy collapses overnight. Later that week, Maya receives a call from General Price, one of David's former commanders. His voice is gravelly but warm. "Mrs. Harris, I've seen many fights in my lifetime. Some were on battlefields, some in the halls of power. You've won one of the hardest battles I've ever witnessed, and you didn't fire a single shot." Maya swallows hard, gripping the phone. "General, I only did what David would have wanted. What all of them would have wanted." There's a pause, then his voice softens. "The Army is proud of you, and so is your husband." When she hangs up, Maya finds Jordan sitting at the kitchen table, sketching his father's medals in a notebook. He looks up and smiles faintly. "Mom, they can't stop you anymore, can they?" Maya places a hand on his shoulder. "They can try, but every attack only proves how strong this movement has become. We're not just defending promises anymore, we're building a legacy." That weekend, thousands gather again, this time outside the Capitol. Families, soldiers, civilians, young and old, standing shoulder to shoulder. The chant rises like thunder. "Justice for the fallen! Justice for the families!" As Maya steps up to the microphone, she looks out at the sea of faces, the flags waving, the children on their parents' shoulders. For a moment, she feels David beside her, whispering the words she now carries in her own voice. "We are not asking for favors," she declares. "We are demanding justice, and we will not stop, not today, not tomorrow, not ever, until every promise is kept." The roar of the crowd shakes the ground beneath her feet. Maya Harris knows the fight isn't over, but with the entire army, and now the entire nation standing behind her, she no longer fears the storm. She has become the storm. The rally outside the Capitol proves to be a turning point. Lawmakers, seeing the tidal wave of public support, call an emergency session to bring the Respect Act to the floor for a full vote. The chamber is packed. Widows, children, veterans, and reporters fill every seat and hallway. Maya sits in the gallery with Jordan beside her, David's folded flag resting on her lap. The air is tense, electric. For hours, senators debate. Some repeat the tired arguments about cost. Others, voices cracking, speak of the promises made on battlefields and in funeral homes. Then, the roll call begins. One by one, the names are called. Yes, yes, yes. The votes climb higher, the outcome becoming clear. When the final tally appears on the board, the gallery erupts. The Respect Act passes by a landslide. Tears stream down Maya's face as she hugs Jordan tightly. Around them, families embrace, veterans salute, and the chamber echoes with applause. For once, politics bends to justice. After the vote, the speaker invites Maya down to the floor. Cameras flash as she walks the long aisle, flag in hand. A senator whispers as she passes, "You did this." Maya shakes her head gently. "We did this." Standing at the podium, her voice carries through the chamber. This is not just a law, it is a promise kept. A promise that sacrifice will never be ignored. A promise that widows and children will never walk alone. Today, we honor the fallen not with words, but with action. The chamber rises in a standing ovation. Even her former critics join in, swept by the gravity of the moment. Outside, the crowd of thousands erupts when the news breaks. Flags wave, tears fall, chants of "Maya, Maya" echo across the National Mall. Yet Maya, standing at the steps, raises her hands to quiet them. "This was never about me," she calls out. "This was about all of you, the families who carried the weight of silence for too long. Today, we carried it together, and together, we changed history." The cheer that follows feels like thunder rolling across the city. That evening, Maya returns home with Jordan. The house is quiet, the folded flag back in its place of honor on the mantel. For the first time in months, she feels peace settle over her shoulders. Jordan sits beside her on the couch. "Mom," he says softly, "Dad would be proud." Maya smiles through her tears. "No, Jordan, he'd be proud of us, of what we've done together." They sit in silence, the kind of silence that feels whole, not empty. The next day, the president signs the Respect Act into law in a televised ceremony. Maya is invited to stand beside him, Jordan at her side. When the president hands her the pen used to sign, he whispers, "This is yours as much as mine." Maya holds it tightly, thinking of David, of every folded flag, of every widow who will never again be forgotten. Months later, Maya walks through Arlington Cemetery with Jordan. Families gather at gravesides, but this time, their voices are not only filled with grief, they carry dignity, strength, and assurance that their sacrifices are recognized. A young widow approaches Maya, tears glistening. "I don't know how to thank you. Because of the Respect Act, my children will have security. You gave us hope when we had none." Maya takes her hand. "We gave each other hope. That's what this fight was always about." As she leaves the cemetery, Maya glances at the rows of white headstones stretching endlessly into the horizon. For the first time, she doesn't just see loss, she sees legacy. David's voice echoes in her heart. "Take care of them, Maya. Take care of our family." She whispers back, "I did, David. We did." The story of Maya Harris spreads beyond the military. Schools teach her fight as a lesson in courage. Activists invoke her name as proof that justice, though slow, can be won. She becomes not just a widow, but a symbol of perseverance and truth. But Maya herself remains grounded. In her heart, she is still the woman who held a folded flag and chose to turn her grief into action. One evening, as the sun sets over Washington, Maya sits on her porch with Jordan. The sky glows orange, the air warm. "Mom," Jordan says, his voice thoughtful, "do you think there will always be people who resist justice?" Maya nods. "Yes. But as long as there are people willing to stand, justice will always rise stronger." They sit quietly, watching the sky darken, knowing the battle they fought has changed the nation. And though the journey was filled with pain, tonight, at last, Maya Harris feels peace.